Again, what we learned until now is that Adam ki Yakriv is alluding to Torah, that if Torah, where I study Torah, that'll draw down Hashem's Isrus of the Le'ela. And once I have the Isrus of the Le'ela, it'll inspire my Nefesh Kiss. Once my Nefesh Kiss is inspired, it'll work on inspiring my Nefesh Bahamis. But the Nefesh Bahamis to be inspired, that's mainly through mitzvahs. So that's why by the Adam Ki Yaakov, it says Adam represents Torah. Then how do you divide the Nefesh Bahamis? So it says Min HaBakar, Min HaTzayin, through bringing a carbon, it's through mitzvahs. So now he's basically taking these three inyanim that he spoke about and showing how it's related to Pesach, Shavuos, and Sfiras Omer. Api kol anal yuvon gam kein inyan Pesach or Sfiras Omer. Based on this, we can understand the difference between Pesach and Sfiras Omer, and of course Shavuos as well. Pesach is Susa de Le'ela. Pesach is considered Susa de Le'ela. Why? The answer is because when Pesach happened, could we say that obviously Hashem was revealed in a way like we never ever saw it before or after, which is the 10 Makkos, and then just going out of Mitzrayim, and then the Kriyas Yamsuf. Was it because of something we did? The answer is no. Not only it wasn't because of something we did, it says that we were in the 49th gate of impurity. There are 50 gates of impurity. And we were in gate number 49. And in gate number 49, we were by the threshold of number 50, which means we were borderline 50. And that's why it says in Medrash, when it says in Chumash, Hashem took them out in the precise moment, what does that mean? That had they been there another moment, they would have slipped into the 50th gate. And once it's the 50th gate of impurity, it's beyond tikkun. You can't repair it. So we were actually in a very low place spiritually. So we can't say that we're the ones that initiated this source of the Leila. So the fact that Hashem revealed himself to us and revealed his love to us was totally coming from him. So Pesach is source of the Leila. The purpose of what? In order to arouse within us, and that's what happened. The Yidden saw Hashem, and they loved Hashem, and they believed in Hashem. But then, in Susad Leila, that is Susad Leila that created a Rotzi, a being drawn to Hashem, that was happening mainly with the Nefesh Elokis. But the Nefesh Bahamis, was not transformed. So the Nefesh Bahamis was totally subdued because Nefesh Elokis was so revealed. And therefore, Nefesh Bahamis became sort of insignificant. It didn't affect us. It was as if we had no Nefesh Bahamis. Why? Because the Nefesh Elokis was shining so bright. But it's not that Nefesh Bahamis in essence changed. And that's why it says, Ki Borech Ha'am, that they ran away from Mitzrayim. Now, the Rebbe explains this in Tanya, chapter 31. Why do they have to run away? Because being that the Klippa was never transformed, you have to run away. There's still a danger. When Mashiach comes, that's going to come as a result of 3,500 years of Avodah, which means we collectively refined ourselves. Nefesh Bahamis has been transformed. Klippa was transformed. So there's nothing to run away from. There's no more Klippa left. But when they went out of Mitzrayim, there was Klippa. It was just overwhelmed by the Kedusha. So that was Pesach. So this is similar to what it says, Adam ki Mekem, that Hashem will reach into us. As it says, this is a pasuk that alludes to Pesach. If you ever notice, on a lot of Pesach Haggadahs, they have a picture of a deer. I don't know if you ever wondered about it. Why is there a deer there? Why is there a deer on the Haggadah? And the answer is because it's hinted in this pasuk. Kol Doidi, I hear the voice of my beloved. Medalig alaharim, jumping over the mountains. And then there's another pasuk that says it's like deers that are jumping around on mountains. So the mountains is an allusion to Torah. Who b'schus Torah shekras har. Like it says, Yisu Horim Shalom La'om, that the mountains bring peace to the people. And the Gemara explains that what is it referring to? So therefore, what we saw was that Torah brought the source of Layla. And by the way, to explain this in a simple way, when Moshe Rabbeinu was standing in front of the burning bush, and Hashem said to him, "Go tell the Yidden they're going out of Mitzrayim." There's another thing Hashem said. They're going to go out of Mitzrayim so that when they go out, they'll be able to go to the mountain and receive the Torah. Which means that, yes, the whole going out of Mitzrayim was the schus of Torah. So therefore, it fits in. It's consistent with what it says here, that the going out of Mitzrayim, which they saw Hashem's open to them and reveal himself to them, was because of Torah. But after that came a mitzvah, Yom Sheni, the second day of Pesach, Korban Omer, to bring the korban, which is Sa'urin, which is not wheat, but barley. And why barley? Shul Meichel Behema, because it's food that's more for an animal. Why is that? Because the purpose of this korban is Li'ez Birur Nefesh HaBahamis, in order to elevate the Nefesh HaBahamis. Usfir Saimer, and that's what Sfir Saimer is. Usvartan Lachem, Pchinis Birur Zayimidis Nefesh HaBahamis. Like I explained yesterday, why is there 7 weeks of counting, not 10 weeks of counting? There's 10 spheres. The answer is because this is not about the Nefesh Kiss, it's mainly about elevating the Nefesh HaBahamis. Nefesh HaBahamis is defined by character traits, by emotions. And emotions, there are 7. So therefore, it's from Chesed to Malchus. So basically, Sfir Sa'im is like the second part of the pasuk, which says, now that your godly soul is inspired, now go ahead and also inspire the animal in you. Takrivu hanususa l'tata. By days then, through this, then comes Shvuas, which is Matan Torah. Upchnis rusa d'leila she'achar susa l'tata is galus ritzene v'chachmosa l'mata. Then comes the second susa d'leila. So, first of all, I want to give this out. I'd like to look at charts. Hope you don't mind. This will be another chart. Make your books too heavy. Hopefully, you'll manage. Good morning. This is showing the 3 time periods of Pesach, Sfiras Omer, and Shavuos, and how it's reflected in the pasuk on top of the page. Moshcheni, pull me, door me to you. Achrecha narutza, we will run after you. Haviyana melech Adar, nagilas chagah. So you see how it all is consistent. Moshcheni means pull me, draw me, singular. When is that? Pesach. Achrecha narutza, we will run after you. We, plural. Sfiras Omer. The king will bring me to his private chamber, and we will rejoice in you, singular, at Shavuos. So Moshcheni, pull me, Hashem inspires me, the Nefesh Elokis, singular. We will run after you. Now we have to inspire the Nefesh HaBahamis. That's Acharecha Narutza. We will both run after you. And then bring me to his private chamber, we shall rejoice in you. That's Shavuos, when the Nefesh HaBahamis has become one with the Nefesh Elokis. Because Matan Torah is the marriage and the bonding of Hashem with the Jewish people. And then we and Hashem, my Nefesh Elokis, and Nefesh HaBahamis, everything becomes one. And that's why it is singular. But here in this mimer, he's saying something more about the spiritual part to it. So one of the main things here is in this paragraph. Thank you very much. Let me repeat what it says again in this paragraph. Where it says, Achakach b'Shvuos, what happens after Shavuos? Matan Torah, when the Torah is given, that's Isrusa D'Leila. It's again Hashem revealing Himself. But you can't compare Hashem's revealing Himself on Shavuos to Hashem's revealing Himself on Pesach. Pesach, Hashem revealed Himself in order to inspire us. Shavuos, Hashem revealed Himself as a result of our work during the 7 weeks of the counting of the Omer. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol niyeh b'dvarim. In other words, there are 2 Isrusa D'Leila. And there's always 2 of everything, no matter what you learn about. There's 2. So one Isrusa D'Leila is the one that comes before the Isrusa D'Tata. How can it be one before? So Stata means that I'm starting. But even though I'm the one that's initiating, I need Hashem to inspire me even to initiate. I once heard a speaker start his speech by saying, I want to say a few words before I start speaking. But you're speaking, so how can you say a few words before you start speaking? So if it's coming from me, how could it be Surah Leila? So the answer is there's 2 kinds of Surah Leila. One where Hashem is initiating, and the purpose is to get me to initiate, and the other is it's a result of my avodah. So Pesach is before my avodah. It's there to inspire me to do my avodah, and Shavuos is a result of my avodah. And the difference is, he doesn't explain here in detail, but he refers to it in the references and so on. The difference is, generally speaking, we'll soon see what he does say, but let me just explain it first. The difference is that the Srusa D'Leila that comes before my Avodah comes from a limited place in the spiritual realm, and that's called Adar. The mere fact that it's called Adam is already an indication that it's limited, because Adam means there are 248 organs, 365, which means levels, limited levels. But when we do the Aveda of Sfira Seimer, and then we draw down the Surah Leila, which is Shavuos, when the Torah was given at Har Sinai, it wasn't that limited light that was shining on Pesach. This is a light that comes from an infinite place, that's infinite beyond anything that we received on the night of Pesach. And that comes through Torah. Next paragraph. Ki nebchinas ki Yakriv v'takrivu, when it says Hashem brings you close, and then you should bring your carbon. This is all about me ascending towards Hashem. When the Torah was given, that's Vayered Havaya al Har Sinai. That was Hashem descending on the mountain. There's some Shachal Lamata. One more paragraph. So basically, he said before that what initiates the Surah Tata is Torah study. Now he's saying that after you finish your Avodah, what's the reward? You get Torah. So what's the difference? This is Torah and that's Torah. So what's the difference between the Torah that we study as a sort of prerequisite that this would initiate that I'll do something inspiring, and the Torah that comes as a result of me doing something inspiring? What is the difference? Both are Torah. No, it's not the same. The difference between Torah study that precedes the Ratzah. Ratzah is the running forward towards Hashem. That's Adam Ki Yakriv. And different between that and Eisek HaTorah, which is after the Ratzah and after elevating one Nefesh Shabamis. Shaydei Zeh HaRatzah B'nei Nefesh Shabamis Nimshach B'Eisek HaTorah M'chinas Ki Lo Yodam. So, for this you need to look into the booklet. I hope it's there. Didn't run away. Why I put it in there in the first place. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, this is one of the pages that we forgot to put in the booklet. Sorry. So I have it here. It was stapled, and these pages were not put in. So this is this is the story we just read. Actually, I'm sure you weren't maybe paying attention to these precise words, and that is the story with Shaul HaMelech and the story with Amalek. That Shaul HaMelech did not kill the king, and he also didn't kill the animals when he was supposed to. And when Shmuel HaNavi said to him, why didn't you fulfill Hashem's word? He said, I did. And Shmuel said, no, I hear voices, I hear the sound of the animals. So he said, yeah, but the people said, let's bring the animals back and we'll bring sacrifices from them. And Shmuel HaNavi said, that's not what Hashem wants from you. All the sacrifices in the world are not more important than just listening what Hashem says. So when we're learning about Amalek, I didn't go into it, and I'm not going to go into it now because we're learning a different Mamar. But what did Shmuel HaNavi say to Shaul? Because you didn't listen to Hashem, you lost your kingdom. Very sad. It wasn't so simple. It said that Shmuel HaNavi was up all night begging and pleading and crying to Hashem that it shouldn't happen, but he couldn't accomplish that. So he came to tell him the news. And then he said to him, because he was sort of begging him that openly he should still continue to respect him. It shouldn't be humiliation in front of the people. But he said, I want to let you know that Hashem doesn't change his mind. And the words he uses are, Hashem doesn't change his mind. He's not a person that changes his mind. The simple pshat means Hashem is not a human being that changes his mind. So when Hashem says something, that's eternal, like everything else about Hashem. But in Chassidus, after you finish learning the first part of the Maimon, that is a level up there that's called Adam, then there's another level that's called Lei Adam. He's not a person. The simple pshat means he's not human. The deeper pshat means it's higher than the level which is called Adam. Adam is a limited level, and therefore it's finite, and it can be measured, it can be calculated, it can be limited. This madrega, which is called Kilei Adam, it's not Adam, means it transcends the limitations of this level called Adam, and this is a place which is infinite. And therefore, there's no changing. Now, the Rebbe is saying the same here. When it says Adam ki Yakriv mikem, that's when the Susad Leila comes, the first one that precedes my Avodah. After my Avodah, I also get from up there, but from the level that's called Lo Adam, the level that's infinite. In other words, it's from a much higher level of Susad Leila. So, to make it clear, something I mentioned in the beginning, but I want to repeat it again and bring out a certain point. And that is, so if you have a question, what is greater, what is better, what has more advantage to it? When I am inspired because Hashem inspired me, like when we went out of Mitzrayim with miracles and all that, or what's greater is when I inspire myself through my own thought process and meditation and saying things to myself that can inspire me. Which is greater? Okay. Is there any advantage in the first?
Yeah.
So what?
You make it practical.
It's stronger.
Yeah. Or stronger.
What did you say about practical?
Only better if you do something about it. Like if you inspire and then you forget about it,
it's going to fly away, right? But even if it's practical, is there still any advantage in that over the other way, which means I'm working hard on my Avodah, and it's also practical and I'm changing?
Yes, it comes in very powerfully. The inspiration that we feel from it is more powerful.
Right. This is the general thing. So I have a chart for that also, but we'll have to maybe leave that for tomorrow. But basically, to see clearly, Isrusa de Le'ela that comes from Hashem to inspire me is much more powerful than me inspiring myself. Like I said the other day, imagine someone is inspired because they were in the war, and these are the miracles that are happening every day today. Miracles should be miracles, where you're in a building and this missile falls everything falls apart, Rahman al which is a lot of damage, but life, everybody's okay. The guy, he was punked here, and this one was actually there. He happened to walk out a second before, a second after, and his life was saved. And the people are so inspired that they're ready to change their whole life. So, because it's a very powerful experience. Compare that to a person sitting and learning a mimer and getting inspired. You can't compare it. How could you compare it? This is like, getting off the ground with a little toy airplane, and this is flying in the air. There was once a certain individual. He was a leader in his community, but he came out and said very, very unpleasant things about the Rebbe. So it was a very big tzaddik in Israel who was called Baba Sali. You ever heard of him? In the Sephardic world, he was like the biggest. So he said in Hebrew, he was comparing the Rebbe and this person. He said, how could a fly with chopped wings stand up against an eagle who flies in the heavens? In other words, this is an eagle, and this is a fly, and the fly even has wings that are chopped. Basically, when I inspire myself, it's like a little fly, just flies from here to there. But when Hashem reveals himself through miracles, that's like flying with an eagle. It's a whole different experience. So then on the other hand, what's the advantage when it comes from me?
It lasts.
And why does it last? Because when it comes from me, it's more pneumius. It's internalized. It really penetrates deeply because I refine myself. So therefore, it's something which lasts.
Rabbi Majeski,
Yeah.
before our avoided, there's always Isur Sedela, like that causes us to do the avoided.
Yeah, I would think, first of all, just on a regular basis, Shabbos is a Resus Leila, Yom Tov is a Resus Leila, and during the week, we don't know about special times, but we know, remember we learned this thing in the Maimon about the heavenly voices that say, do tshuva. Sometimes we hear it, and sometimes we don't. I don't mean we hear it consciously,
Right.
but sometimes we respond. So I guess there are definitely differences. Sometimes the Resus Leila is much more open. And especially, this is one of the examples, when someone sees something in their life, which is miraculous, and he sees Hashem's kindness in one way or another, that's the biggest Resus Leila. So I mentioned to you in the beginning that this mimer is a mimer that today, at least, maybe this was always the way, that when children start learning Chassidus, this is the first mimer that they learn. And perhaps it has to do with the fact that it's a Vayikra, that's how they start learning Chumash from Vayikra. But I think it's also connected to another thing. In a certain sense, this mimer, the mimer that defines the essence of the difference between Chabad and all the other Hasidic groups, which is that all the Hasidic groups have the same goal in mind. All the followers of the Baal Shem Tov. The destination is the same. And the destination is that we should be inspired with Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem, and Amunas Hashem. That's the ultimate goal. In other words, those who don't study Chassidus are more focused on action, on learning, on davening, doing the mitzvahs, don't do averas, be very careful. You're focused on the action, not so much on the inspiration. And the purpose of Baal Shem Tov was to learn Chassidus and to learn and bring ourselves to a place where we're inspired with Avas Hashem, Yiras Hashem, and Amunas Hashem, these three things. But the difference is, what we find, one of the main differences between Chabad and other groups is that other groups focus a lot on miracles. The Rebbe would perform open miracles to the Chassidim. In Chabad, the Rebbe also did miracles, but it was very much camouflage. It wasn't in an open way, and it was all done in that this was not like the main way of inspiring the Hasidim. The main way of inspiring Hasidim was through learning Hasidus. Now, the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe, there's a very interesting dialogue going on in letters, where the Rebbe writes a letter to the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe answers the Rebbe, and it's all about the subject. And the Rebbe is saying to the Frierdiker Rebbe, how come in Chabad we don't find the Rebbe should perform more miracles, more open miracles? So the Rebbe once spoke about these letters by Farbrengen, and he said, I wasn't, God forbid, questioning my father-in-law. I was just trying to bring out that my father-in-law should perform more open miracles. So he was sort of saying, why doesn't Chabad also do more open miracles? But in the dialogue, you see the following: the Frierdiker Rebbe explains why that is the essence of Chabad, and he tells a story that there was a mashpia whose name was Rabbi Leib, and he lived in a town where there was Chabad Hasidim. There were other Hasidim, and he had one student that used to be a Chassid of the other Rebbes, and then one day he was exposed to Chassidus and he got very inspired and he became a Chabad Chassid. Every time he would meet with his old friends, as the nature is of students, that they would tease each other. They would say, our Chassidus is better, and he would say, my Chassidus is better. And they would say to him, on one hand, we're really envious of you because our Rebbe doesn't allow us to study Chassidus in depth. So you really are fortunate that you can do that. But one thing we do have, and you don't have, is our Rebbe performs open miracles. Your Rebbe can't do that. We don't see, there are no stories of your Rebbe without Rebbe. Hasidim didn't tell stories of miracle stories. It bothered him because it meant, to a certain extent, as if the Alter Rebbe is inferior to those Rebbes. But he wouldn't even speak about it. He's not going to tell his mashpia, how come the Alter Rebbe does no miracles? He's not big enough. So it was embarrassing. He never said anything. One day his mashpia calls him in and says, I got a letter from the Alter Rebbe, but I don't understand it. And apparently you're the one that's going to help me understand it. Shocking. Me? I said, yeah, it's about you. The Alter Rebbe writes to me, I should draw you closer and speak to you more, and to alleviate what's on your chest, and this will be a miracle. I don't understand what this is. It sounds like a mystery. And of course, he understood right away that Alter Rebbe knew what was on his heart, and he was telling his mashpia, you have to talk to him, explain to him what Chabad is, and in the meantime, he'll have his miracle. That the Alter Rebbe was a few hundred miles away, he knows exactly what he's thinking and what he's feeling. And what did he explain to him? That this is not the way of Chabad, because this is the same idea. There's a pasuk, and this was sort of the theme of the other Hasidim. Mainly was known by a certain rabbi called Reb Shlomo of Karlin. He's the one who gave this saying. There's a pasuk that says, Tzadik b'menaseh yichya. A tzaddik lives by his faith. Just like we live through eating and drinking, a tzaddik lives by his faith in Hashem. That's his source of life. So he explained the pasuk a little bit different. Not chas v'shalom, different than whenever we say you give an insight, it doesn't take away the literal meaning. It means there's a deeper meaning. Tzadik b'menaseh, if you change the vowels, it reads yichaya. The tzaddik, with the fact that the Hasidim have a munah in him, yichaya, he gives them life. In other words, the Hasidim, by being connected to the Rebbe, that is what inspires them, and that's how they become inspired, because they don't learn Hasidus in depth. The Rebbe didn't believe that it's appropriate. The Rebbe learned Hasidus in depth, but not the Hasidim. So where did they get inspiration from? They were connected to the Rebbe. And because the Rebbe was inspired, they became inspired. And this was the difference. The Alter Rebbe said no. And what is the difference? When you get inspired because your Rebbe is sort of sending you inspiration, it's very powerful. It's like a source of the Layla. You feel something very strong, and and especially if a Rebbe goes ahead and does something miraculous. He tells you the past, he tells you the future, he reveals things to you that you never knew before, and you get inspired in a very powerful way. But that inspiration is not coming from you, so it's not as deep. It doesn't penetrate as deep. When you learn Chassidus and what you're learning inspires you, that's an inspiration that is more internal because it's coming from my understanding, but it's not as powerful. So they believe that it's better to have something which is more powerful, even though it's not as deep. And the Alter Rebbe said it's better to have something that's less powerful, but it's deeper. So that's known by the word pneumius. Pneumius means that it penetrates deeply inside, internalized. Yeah.
Just going back, you said that all this want to be inspired by Yiras Hashem, Mechaves Hashem. What was the third thing?
Amuna. There was a Rebbe, he was a student of the Maggid Mazich. His name was Reb Chaikel Hamadura. It was probably the name of his city. He was someone who was always on fire. And especially when he davened, you can see literally that the man was like burning. Now he had 3,000 Chassidim in Russia. And when he davened, they would all be davening wherever they lived. And they would be on fire because his fire was manifested in them. So one time the Alter Rebbe was with the Chassid, one of his Chassidim, and he was in a shul, and there was one of the Chassidim of this Rebbe. And you looked at this Chassid davening, and he was like out of this world. So the Chassid said, Alter Rebbe, look, brennt, which means, he said in Yiddish, look, he's on fire. The Alter Rebbe said, no, he's not on fire. Reb Chaika was on fire. In other words, if the fire that he has is coming from his Rebbe, it means to a certain extent, it's not his fire, it's his Rebbe's fire reflecting in his heart. The only way it could be my fire is if it comes from my understanding and my brain stimulates my heart. And even though the feeling that I get is like a little dropper coming out of a dropper, but it's me and it's deeper. And that's one of the main differences. The Friedrich Rebbe says that years ago, in the times of the Alter Rebbe, the Mitzvah Rebbe, Tzemach Tzedek, people didn't pay attention to the miracle stories. Yes, and now it's something which is encouraged, and the Rebbe said this brings Mashiach. But in those days, it wasn't something which was so much, that Chaz Hashem, they didn't realize the greatness, but it wasn't such a focus. And also, even when the Rebbe did perform a miracle, it was very hidden. And he gives an example. He said that he writes in a letter, and in those letters, that exchange of letters, there was a woman who unfortunately had a child that was born and he couldn't speak since the day he was born. He was mute. On top of that, she had another unfortunate situation, which is her husband disappeared and he never came back home. And that, if he doesn't come back home, then she's in a status called aguna. Aguna means a woman who is bound to the sense that she can't remarry and she has no married life. Her husband is gone, so she has no married life. Because we don't know if he's alive or not, she can't remarry. If something happened to him, he's no longer alive, she could marry again. But if not, she can't remarry without a get, without a divorce. Apparently, I'm not sure why, but in the times of the Tzemach Tzedek, this was quite common. And it was known that the Tzemach Tzedek would help people and guide people how to find their husbands. And a lot of incredible stories with this. And this is one of them. Anyway, she came to Lubavitch, because people told her to go to Lubavitch, and she heard that the Tzemach Tzedek is not seeing people now. Well, right now he's not seeing women, and she wanted to get the Rebbe's answer. She couldn't get it. So someone gave her advice. She should try to apply to work in the Rebbe's house, in the kitchen, help out. And while she's there already, she'll find a way to get her bracha. So she did that, and she actually was given some work. And then someone advised her, take a piece of paper, write down on the piece of paper, Rebbe, please tell me where I can find my father. My mother wants to know where she can find my father, because the boy couldn't speak. And let the boy hide, because no one's going to allow him to walk over to the Tzemach Tzedek, a little boy. Let him hide somewhere, and when the Tzemach Tzedek walks into the room, he'll give the Tzemach Tzedek the note. That's what happened. In the room where the Tzemach Tzedek was supposed to come, there was a table, and there was a tablecloth that hung over all the way to the ground. So he went and hid under the table, and he can't see him because the tablecloth was blocking. Here's the Tzemach Tzedek walk in, he goes out of the tablecloth, and he hands him the note. The Rebbe's secretary sees him, starts screaming, "What are you doing here?" Before he had a chance to lead him out of the room, he already gave the Rebbe the note. The Rebbe looked at the note and said, "Tell your mother that your father is in this city." He comes back to his mother, and he said, the Rebbe said my father's in this city, and his mother faints. She never heard him speak in his life. So there was a double miracle here. Number one, that he spoke. Number two, the Rebbe never saw her. The Rebbe doesn't know who she is. Never saw her husband, and he told her, "Your husband's in this city." Later, someone told the Tzemach Tzedek the story. So the Tzemach Tzedek said, "It's not my fault. I didn't know that he can't speak. No one told me that he can't speak." Don't blame me. Yeah. But anyway, the Friedrich Rebbe says, so here was a double miracle. Not the Friedrich Rebbe said that the Rebbetzin of the Tzemach Tzedek said, look at the Chassidim today. They're getting all excited. In my father's days, her father was the Mittel Rebbe. My father's day, there were miracles rolling all over the place, and nobody even bothered to pick it up, which means the Chabad Chassidim, their thing was not to be inspired by the miracle, but to be inspired by the learning and the understanding. We're not on that level today, so we need miracles, and Hashem should keep giving them more and more, and have the miracle. But we see also the Rebbe was begging the Friedrich Rebbe to perform more open miracles, and we see once the Rebbe became Rebbe, he started to do that, perform more open miracles, and the Rebbe told us by telling stories of open miracles. So the open miracles, this is like the idea of a Srusa del Eila that comes before the Srusa del Tata, and then there's the Srusa del Eila that comes after. So I'd like to do the review with the turns and the questions. And after that, if we have time, we'll start tomorrow the new Mamar. Then at the new Mamar, we'll start learning about Pesach. Okay, to be continued.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.